So many women say, where are the men? We're here. We're not shouting it from the rooftops. The world has relied on men to use their healthy anger since the beginning of time. I call it a hidden revolution, changing the world with our hearts.
But there is this castration of men, maybe so deliberate, that they can't touch their healthy anger.
I was conditioned by patriarchy to be hard. I had no sorrow, I had no sadness, I couldn't really feel. And one relationship after another ended up with women sitting in front of me saying the same thing. When are you going to commit? We have to truly be in relationships with ourselves first. So our wounded inner boy who was going to his partner, heal me, look after me, fix me, I need you, I need you. And so the woman's ending up with a boy in relationship rather than her king. Our true king brings us to love and to wholeness, to peace and joy.
What do you see as the signs that it's time for a man to embark upon his sovereign's journey? Welcome back, listeners. Welcome back to another episode of the Authentic Man podcast. And today we're going to be speaking to a man he's been in the men's work for a long time, long before many of the men who I have interviewed over the years have been in it. He has been working with men for over 2 decades, which I think is incredible. And I imagine he's seen real shifts and changes, which we'll get into. And we're probably going to dive into a lot of the work that he's done around men, the work he's doing now in terms of that energy of sovereign, of kingship that is so lacking in men today, and the many struggles that we have when it comes into life, our confidence, our self-esteem, and our relationships, and how that really impacts our ability to be happy and joyful. Today, I welcome Hugh. How are you doing?
Very good, David. Very good. Feels lovely to be here. So thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I often love to ask, because I think it's always an interesting story from people, is like, what was your catalyst to get into this work?
Yeah, thanks. Catalyst was childhood trauma. I grew up in Africa, in Zimbabwe, when it was Rhodesia, the real tail end of the British colonial system, where the original Zimbabwean people decided they needed the Europeans out, and they needed their own country back, and they needed the vote. And this was strongly refused by the Rhodesian government, and so the African people went to war with the white Rhodesian government, and we lived way out in the bush, and we were one of the targets for really to be attacked and killed for much of my childhood. And I left Rhodesia in 1978, and shortly after that, the European government gave up the fight, and it became Zimbabwe, which it should have always been. So in that tidy up of the British colonial system, I was caught in the crossfire, and for many years I had a quite difficult time protecting my family, armed as a child, protecting my family from a lot of danger. And that left me with profound PTSD, which I covered up, as we all do. I came to England when I was 15 and completely hid my previous life and covered up my symptoms of PTSD, but was having a lot of internal psychic problems with that, from nightmares and various other things. And I managed to keep a lid on it for a while until I was 33, and I met someone who recommended MKP to me. And so I went in February 1997 for my own initiation, and then joined a local group and worked on myself pretty solidly for 10 years to try and pull myself together and to heal and to get myself in a position where I could be sane and happy and joyful. And gradually finding my way through that, I've realized that I have a very passionate love of serving other men and supporting other men to wholeness and to love and joy. And so whilst attending to my own difficulties, I also trained myself up to support other men along the same journey, which I believe it's much the same for all of us. And us men need help and we need support. And so my great passion is to support men into their hearts, into their sovereignty, so that us men can sort ourselves up and support the world in a good way.
Much needed. And it's so interesting, isn't it? Because we're in this, I feel often we're kind of in this little corner of the world doing this work to, help men be more emotionally attuned, emotionally connected, to feel their own pain, to notice their impact of them. And it can almost feel a bit invisible to the greater world that this is even happening, that this little corner of the world is actually expanding at quite a rate. But the dominant media still is the harm and damage that men do to themselves, but also that continue to do to the world as a whole.
That's right. I call it a hidden revolution that has been run by men in the background. So many women say, where are the men? And I'm saying, we're here and we are getting ourselves together. And there's lots of us. And the difficulty, it's quiet. We're not shouting it from the rooftops. We're all just doing our own work and changing the world with our hearts. And it's taking time. And we've come from a really backstepped place, and we've got a lot to wade through to bring ourselves into happiness and into service. And it's taking a bit of time, but we are here, and there's lots of us.
Yeah, it's so true. There's lots of us, and women often say to me, David, where are all the good men? And I say, they're everywhere. They're everywhere.
Exactly, David. Well said. They are.
They're everywhere. They're walking past you in the street. They're in the supermarket next to you. And I give myself as an example sometimes. And I was at a talk I was doing around dating and relationship. And I said, look, if you saw me walk down the street past you in the middle of the afternoon or a Saturday afternoon, would you even think I do what I do? You wouldn't. You would just think I was just another guy.
That's right.
Dressed however, you would have no idea. And that's how it is. There's men that are doing the work. Doesn't mean they're perfect. It doesn't mean we still don't get triggered and find things difficult. But we do exist. Sometimes we know each other.
Sometimes we know each other, and we know lots of other men who are doing the same work. And yeah, we're not finished articles. I don't believe anyone ever is. We're all evolving. Life would be pretty boring if we couldn't keep evolving. But yeah, we're doing our work. And I love the title of your work, The Authentic Man Studio, because I find that we can't be authentic unless we do our own work, because I cannot be authentic unless I know what's going on inside me and who I am. If I know who I am, I can be authentic. If I don't, then I can't be.
Exactly. And I guess a question for you is, no, actually, I'm going to start with this question. You've been doing this work for a long time, a really long time, 25 years plus, right? And what have you seen change actually in the men or in the general psyche of men over that time? Because that's 2.5 decades. That's a generation, as they say technically. You must have seen some differences in the men, the problems that they're having, how those problems are surfacing. What have you seen over those 25 years?
Okay, well, the first thing I've seen over those 25 years is that for the first 10 years of me doing this work, I believed that it was considered really weird. That men would attend themselves, go off in their groups, do their own healing work. The world viewed that with a lot of suspicion. That's what I found. And then again, myself and some other men from MKP formed an organization called a Band of Brothers, where we were doing this sort of work for young men coming out of prison. And I noticed a real sea change from the outside world when it realized that this sort of work is deeply healing and can very much help men, as it did with these young men in Band of Brothers coming out of prison. And what I noticed was the world started to welcome men's work and started to see that it could be a beautiful force in the world. So that from being very suspicious of us to being open to this sort of work, that's the first change I noticed. For the first 10 years, men mostly came through with very deep anger. For the first years, including myself, we were working on anger, angry men. And these days, there's still lots of anger amongst men, but I notice that the prime emotion amongst men is sorrow and sadness. Yeah, men have done a lot of their angry work, and what's hidden under anger is sadness, I find. Our protective parts stay angry to protect our vulnerable and sad and struggling parts, and men are coming forward these days with their sorrow, which I really welcome. It took me so long to reach my own sorrow. I was so armored against feeling it or showing it. And so I notice that men these days are showing and working with their sorrow. And I'm really happy about that, because it's a big step forward for us men.
Yeah. And do you think that now men have sorrow in comparison, maybe, like you said, the first 10 years anger, is that's a bit of a generational shift, that maybe those younger men who are coming forward now, they never armored up with anger because they maybe got slightly different messages around emotions in comparison to, say, the men that were coming, like you said, at the beginning in, the late 90s. They were still coming out of the hide, you have to hide behind anger. You have to be an angry man to be respected, maybe even.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do think that for a lot of us, for my generation, I was conditioned by patriarchy to be hard and to not show any forms of weakness, any vulnerability. Actually, the only emotion that was acceptable for me to show was anger. And so what I've noticed in recent years, I notice if I feel sorrow, I struggle to show it. I'm more likely to show anger. If I feel fear, I'm more likely to show anger. Everything went into that pot. And as you say, men of a more recent time have not had to armor up so much. I don't think the level of control and the kind of crushing down of male patriarchy has been quite so much. And so men are much more in a place where they can be tender, where they can be vulnerable. They haven't had to put on such a huge set of armor as my generation did. And so they're able to get to the nub of their pain much more quickly without working through oceans of anger first to find the sadness underneath. They're much more emotionally literate and much more aware of the sadness than I ever was, because essentially I was numb. So I just couldn't feel it. I'd crushed it so early on, I couldn't feel it. And it's taken me years, but I find that the generations coming after me are way more emotionally together than I was, and much more able to access their pain.
Yeah. I can really see that. I still regard myself as a young man, but I still look back and even in my early self-development work in my mid-20s, I remember being at an organization called Landmark Education in my mid-20s. And there was lots of men maybe in there at that time, would have been in their kind of 40s and 50s, and they were very angry. And I remember almost for me, it was quite scary, anger, I didn't necessarily have much contact with anger. And I guess that leads me to my next thought/question actually is, do you find that those men who have access to sorrow, they also maybe struggle with anger, or they have a difficult relationship with anger, or a difficult judgment of anger because of their experiences maybe by their own fathers and so forth?
Very much so. Yeah, so anger for me is actually in its healthy form, it's a really useful emotion. Archetypally, I put it in the warrior, the part of me that holds boundaries, that creates space for myself, seeks to protect and create space for other people, the part of me that does the work and pushes forward my career. And yeah, anger can be a strengthening and motivating force if it's used in the right way. And yet for lots of men, especially if they haven't been around anger, or if they've been around anger and it seemed really dangerous, lots of men have their anger in a wounded place. So a healthy anger can seem quite threatening to them. And they might be in a place where they go, I don't need anger, anger's bad. it's no good in it. Why don't we just get rid of all anger? And that's actually going too far the other way for me, where there's an undermining of self and a loss of strength by saying, nah, we don't need anger. Let's not do that. It's part of us men. We need it.
Yeah. I'd love to know a bit more about this healthy anger, because, there'll be people who are listening to this and they're like, no, that's an oxymoron. We can't have a healthy anger. Anger is the cause of so many of the bad things in the world. Like, how do we, I guess two things, how do we tell the difference between healthy anger and unhealthy anger? And then how do we get in contact with our healthy anger and use that as a potential fuel?
I see healthy anger as love for myself, love for the people around me. I would use my healthy anger to really steadily hold my boundaries. If someone wanting to take advantage of me or even threaten me or use me for their purpose, something like that, I'd put a really clear boundary down and say no. And if that person wanted to push past my boundary, I'd bring in my healthy anger to say no way or no fucking way if I needed to maintain my integrity and to maintain my place and my choices and my view of what's right. Healthy anger is needed for protection. If someone came in towards my family or my community or my friends in a way that could be really damaging, if someone was unjust or doing things hurting other people or trying to hurt women or children, I would bring my healthy anger on and stand in front of them and say, no, you don't do this. And if you're going to, then you will face my healthy anger. And the thing is about healthy anger is it's solid, it's expressive, it's strong, it's a no, but it's not seeking to overpower anyone. It's much more seeking to create a boundary and to police that boundary in a way. Police my no. If I haven't got healthy anger behind my no or my yes, then actually they don't mean much, because anyone can bust through my boundaries. If I haven't got healthy anger, I probably need to use a whole load of different other behavior, such as people pleasing or letting other people walk over me, so I do what they need rather than what I need, giving myself away too easily, not standing up for myself or others. And so my healthy anger is just like a force of fire, which is within me. I'm not trying to burn anyone else, but when I say no, it's no. And that's all there is to it. And I'll police it with my healthy anger. The difficulty is if I've got no anger, well, I'm a walkover. Really, anyone can do anything around me. They can push me around. And if I hide my anger, what will happen long term is I'll explode at the wrong time. And then my anger will come out completely unregulated. It'll probably be way too much for the situation. It'll cause damage to others. It can cause damage to me as well. And I'm using it as a flamethrower rather than a deliberate force where I say no. So anger needs to be regulated, and I need to be in control of my anger so that I can use it at the right time consciously with permission from my sovereign, and so I can put it down when it's not the right time to need it. And if I haven't worked with my anger, I'm not actually in control of my healthy anger. It's either non-existent or explosive. So a lot of the work I do is training men how to be angry in an appropriate way, in an appropriate situation, and not to do damage with their anger, but to use it for good.
I love that. It's so beautifully, so clearly described. Like I feel really super clear. It's like, it's that consciousness, the connection to it is in service of something. It's in service of something meaningful, and as you say, it doesn't come out kind of sideways or explosive. It's like pointed. It's like it's almost like a sword, isn't it? It's like it's used very deliberately. Like, okay, this person's going to cause harm to people. It's going to cause harm to other people around me or to myself. I need to generate this energy of forward motion, this anger, this firmness to be a no and stand by my no. And then as you describe it there, it's almost like the world lacks this men lack this healthy anger. We actually have a huge lack of this healthy anger, because I was on a talk actually on the weekend, Soul to Soul mini festival down in Southwest London, and a question was, why is it that so many men stand by and see terrible things happening? Whether that is, they're bystanders on the tube and they see someone maybe being shouted at, a woman being abused or close to being abused, or, there's a load of situations that we would describe. Like, what is it that has men not react and not do anything? Or even in the current state of injustice in the world, why do men not do anything? And as you describe it there, like what I'm, at the time I talked about assertiveness when the question was pointed at me, men lack empowerment and assertiveness, but actually like also, and maybe even more important so, like what they lack is healthy anger, like anger and be like, this is wrong. This is unjust. I'm going to do something about this. And in fact, so many men are, and I say this often to people, it might appear that so many men have so much power, and they do, but the average man you speak to is incredibly disempowered. They lack healthy anger, they lack assertiveness and even direction, so that when their boundaries are crossed or their morals are crossed or their values are crossed, they people please or they cower because they don't feel they have that ability to, be no, I want to do something about this, or that they have agency to do anything about what's wrong.
Yeah, thanks, David. And my feeling is the world has relied on men to be able to use their healthy anger since the beginning of time. And that's healthy anger for myself, and it's also healthy anger to keep my world safe. And I see that as a responsibility. I see that as my responsibility. Actually, I see it as every man's responsibility. For instance, if someone on the tube is hassling a woman, then I believe us men need to step up and say, it's not okay. It's really not okay. You shouldn't do this. I'm not going to let you do this. We are a protective force. All that stuff about women and children to the lifeboats first. Well, actually, I believe that. Men are here in service in a lot of ways. And to be profoundly in service, we need our healthy anger, because we need our strength. We need our ability to protect and to serve. And we are losing our power if we don't have that. And if we can't step up and say no, then we're in a place that's not great for us or for the rest of the world.
Yeah. If men lose their, healthy anger is, someone I had someone in my community did a talk, and he talked about, men being castrated. And I always find the comments, part of me feels a little uncomfortable because it feels like kind of conspiracy. But if you drop the kind of conspiracy idea, and maybe it is just a projection we have that in the past, in the good old days, men were like men and they were tough and they would say no to things, and maybe that isn't quite the case. But there is this almost sense, as you say, that there is a castration of men, maybe not so deliberate, maybe so deliberate that they can't touch their healthy anger. Many because of the things you've mentioned, they've been at the other end of anger, or we've demonized anger publicly for very good reason, because it's so close to kind of rage and uncontrollable and explosive anger. The men are swung so much the other way. The nice guy coming from Dr. Robert Glover, and just embodying that and wanting to avoid ever being bad or wrong, but it means that they also don't protect the world and what's right, or their own values and morals in the world.
Yeah, that's right. There's a healthy mid-form, and the healthy mid-form is a healthy, strong, beautiful, loving, heartful man. The model we had before was anger and rage, and it wasn't fully necessarily constrained by men knowing themselves and having access to, for instance, our sadness or fear or those things. It's necessary for us to know ourselves inside out and to be able to practice our anger as one of the many parts of ourselves, and to be authentic with our anger, and to be authentic being able to stand up for ourselves. And if that's missing, we're in a tough spot. We really are in a tough spot. We've sold ourselves out to a much gentler version. Us men, gentleness is beautiful, but it's no good if we haven't got the ability to stand firm as well. We need both those. Gentleness is a choice, and it's a choice which is made safe by ability to stand firm. And without being able to stand firm, we can't choose the gentle. We're just being pushed aside, essentially.
Mm. Yeah. If often feels like the world only wants men to be gentle, right, and soft, and for understandable reason, I don't discount the things that have occurred. But I think what I've seen in these years, especially in the last kind of 5 or 6 years of my life and my work, is there also a call for men to be leaders, to step up and stand up and be counted in that way. And that healthy anger is both incredibly necessary, but also the kind of capacities to lead not just ourselves, but, other men as well.
Mm. Oh, we're needed. David, we are needed. We're needed so badly. We're needed so badly that the world needs us to move out of the old form of being masculine into our new form, into a healthy form. That's why I'm working with Sovereign all the time. The way I work with Sovereign is I support men to build their true king. I don't know if you know the wound of the king. The wound of the king is that I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
It's a huge wound, and as far as I can see, all of us men have it in some form. And what that does to us is it leads us with terrible lack of confidence and ability to create the world we know our heart longs for and the people around us longs for. So the work I do is to help men just love that part of themselves, their wounded king who feels he's not good enough and doesn't have self-confidence, and let him rest and bring on our true king. Our true king brings us to love and to wholeness, to peace and joy. And our true king loves to be in a world with other true kings. It's the tyrant who loves to be over others and bigger than others, who forces everyone to do his wants and makes the world for himself, who's narcissistic and selfish. We don't want that sovereignty either. We want beautiful, heartful, men who are authentic, know themselves inside out so they can always choose how they're going to be in each situation, know their qualities, know their internal parts inside themselves, and can choose to be healthy in their expression of their masculinity, and our world needs it. And us men need to step up because there's a lot of course correction that we need to bring to the effort we've been making in the world. And lots of us men are doing that. We're bringing forward a healthy form of masculinity, and our world needs it. We really need it. Yeah.
Mm. And you talk about that wound of not being enough, and it's like it's the wound of the man, the global. Every man I work with, every man I talk to, the wound is I'm not enough, and it surfaces in so many ways that surprise people. I look at these wildly successful men, a man like Elon Musk, for example, and I see very clearly is a man that doesn't feel like he's enough. There's somewhere in there. There's a father wound in there. That if I pay enough attention to him, we'll start to dig out, this feeling of not being blessed by a father, not being shown, not being believed in, that then plays out in the world. When we don't feel enough, we have to create enough in some way, or we do the opposite.
That's right.
The two sides of the shadow.
Yeah.
I guess from your perspective, from again this perspective over this quarter of a century, how have you seen that shift, that shadow kings in men, how that has kind of expressed in their life? Has there been any change that you've noticed from back in the late 90s to kind of through to up to now?
Honestly, I think the move to king, which is and to self-sovereignty and the true inner sovereign, which is coming about now, is relatively new in men's work from what I can see. And there's so much danger of being in our wounded kings. One is that I don't live my life as I should. I don't bring myself to beauty and to love. I'm leading a far less effective and powerful life than I ever could be. I'm hiding away. I'm not expressing myself. I'm doing other people's mission and vision. I'm not really doing my own. Or the tyrant where I got these 20 projects. I'll show you how good I am, how big I am. And on the other side, we overshoot, trying to endlessly prove to everyone else, look, I am good enough. I am good enough. I'll show you with these amazing things I do. But the overshoot where I get too much, it's a place of self-obsession. There's no real love in there, only love for me, not love for my community or for the people around. I'm trying to prove endlessly to everyone how great I am. And unfortunately, we're in a stage in the world where this sort of tyrant leader seems to be coming back to the surface and taking control of whole countries in some places, institutions, and bringing a lot of pain and damage and war and hurt to the world. So it looks like we are going into another somewhat tyrant king, sadly, episode for the world. And it's going to be up to us men who really know ourselves, who are going to say, no, this sort of way of behaving is not what the world needs. It's not what I need. It burns up the world. It doesn't bring love and peace and happiness like our true sovereignty does. And so what I've noticed is that this work around the king is relatively new. There's been lots around warrior, as we all know. Thank God our feeling nature is starting to come much more on the surface. There's lots of magician and thinking and mind in the world, but this coming to self-sovereignty as a way of bringing us all to love is relatively new. And so I'm starting to see it men becoming far more aware of their inner king and far keener to get to know this part of themselves and to regulate themselves from our loving king and bring that aspect of ourselves into the world in service. So I see the king's work as being relatively new to the world of men's work.
Yeah. I see that. Men are very, imagine, I even think of my early years in the work, men are very wanting to be the warrior. The warrior is almost the archetype that feels so powerful, especially for a man.
That's right.
For all men, I think, gravitate towards the warrior often. Some may gravitate towards the lover because that's, intimacy and sex with the feminine, and maybe they're desiring more of that. But we have this story. It's almost like we have a bit of a story around kings, isn't it? I feel there's a common psyche around kings in the way that you described the kind of tyrant that we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of tyrants all arise at the same time across Europe, across the Americas, across Asia and the Middle East. It's a real era of tyrant, and it's kind of odd actually even thinking about that, because it felt like at one point in our journey in from a leader's point of view, we were swinging towards the kind of like almost, the benevolent king or the lover king. It's people like Barack Obama to some degree. You could even argue people like David Cameron, they were caring and thoughtful and loving and so forth. And we've seen this hard swing to these tyrant authoritarian kings. What do you think that's linked to? Not necessarily from a power structure above, but what's that's linked to, like what's missing for men, the general man, that maybe they're seeking to put their energy and their faith in these kind of tyrant kings?
I feel that for men to put their faith in someone like tyrant king running America, they're coming from a place of lack. And they're believing that the right thing to follow is power outside of themselves rather than power inside of themselves. And they're finding attractive proposition. And the difficulty with tyrant kings is they kind of legalize shadow. So if I'm a person who wants to hurt and gain power and injure other people, tyrant kings make that possible, make it acceptable even, maybe even want to give me a position so I can go out and do that in the world. So for me, tyrant kings try and they bring shadow to the surface. Just to check, are you hearing okay? Because I had a thing saying my internet wasn't quite so good, but hopefully that's gone through. Yeah, the difficulty we've got is we just don't have many examples of true kings. I'd call someone like Nelson Mandela a true king who worked for his people, who was never out there for himself, brought the beauty of his strength to the service of his whole nation. There are just hardly any examples of that. And so what we have instead is the warrior, and what the warrior is engaged with is the hero's journey. 20 to 40, maybe 20 to 50, I'll go out in the world, I'll succeed, I'll have my trials, I'll win, etc., etc. I'll work really hard, I'll try incredibly hard. It's beautiful, it's really beautiful. That's our hero's journey. But these days, we don't end our lives at 50. And there's a time that comes after our hero's journey where I'm too old for my heroic, huge effort. Actually, it'll burn me out. If I stay in my great pushing warrior in my 50s, in my 60s, in my 70s, I'll burn myself out. Something's going to crash. I'll destroy my health. I don't even want to be in there anymore. It's not a happy place for me. I need my sovereign's journey to bring me into my authenticity, into my true heart, so I really know who I am, so I can gather up all the parts of myself and bring myself to love and happiness. So before I die, I absolutely know who I am, and I can gather all of the best of myself to serve my world. And that's the sovereign's journey. It's not the pushing forward into the world journey of the hero. It's the inward journey of the king who seeks to know himself and bring himself to complete authenticity. So it's the second journey, and us men are only just becoming aware that once our hero's journey is over, we need to tend to our new journey, our sovereign's journey, which is about love and service and peace and joy and authenticity, not about forcing our way into success and being the warrior. It's not a warrior's journey, the second one. It's our king's journey.
Mm. And what do you see as the signs that it's time for a man to embark upon his sovereign's journey?
Unhappiness. Unhappiness. If I'm struggling with depression, if I don't really believe in myself, if I can't create the world that the best of me, my heart longs for, if I'm still numb, if I can't bring myself any joy in the world, if I feel my life is pointless, if I don't know the meaning of who I am, if I don't have spiritual connection or soulful connection, for me, those are all signs that it's time to go inwards and to step away from my worldly effort and start attending to my soul and my being and my deeper meaning and point of being in this world. And it's time for me to know inside out who I am so I can bring the best of myself forward. To pull myself out the shadows, find all the parts of me that aren't happy or that are depressed or that are violent or that are shadowy or numb, to find all of those parts and from the heart of my king to tend to myself so that I can bring myself to health and happiness.
And there's so many men, that is, that sense of unhappiness, that quiet. Someone said it to me recently, a man I was speaking to about coaching. He put it so profound. He said, put it so profoundly, and I'm literally in my mind's eye. I can see where I wrote it on my pad, and it was something on the lines of, as a man, you learn not to struggle, obviously, but underneath there's a quiet struggle, there's a quiet unhappiness that just is there on the surface. You got a decent job, you have a marriage, maybe you have relationships, maybe you are accomplished as women, but underneath exists a quiet unhappiness, a quiet emptiness that we've learned to hide from the world. So it never looks obviously to anyone that we are unhappy or we are in desperation. And even saying that, connecting to what you said, it kind of links to something that flashed up actually on my Instagram feed, I think it was, where it was basically saying that, mental health issues or even men at the point of suicide, it just looks different to maybe it does for women. And we need to learn more about what it looks like for actually a man who's really struggling.
We do, and so many men are hiding their struggle in the shadows. to be in too little king, where I don't believe in myself. I'm feeling a bit depressed. I don't think anything's ever going to work for me. I've got lots of fear. And while I'm in that place, I'm also constantly attacked by my self-critic who's going, you're shit, you're never going to make it, you're always going to be awful. It's a painful place to be. It's a really painful place to be. It's more than just emptiness. It's actually painful. And my passion is to support men out of that pain so that we can live a love of life and joy, starting with self-love. Because I've found it's not possible for me to love the world if I don't love myself. So starting with self-love and self-care and self-healing, tending to myself first and turning that same beautiful energy to support other men and bring it to the world. Oh, I have the greatest sadness for the suffering of men. It's massive. We've seen all the figures around suicide and mental health. It's massive. And us men are here to help each other. And I'm so grateful that I see other men like you, David, who are doing this work and helping men, because men need it.
Mm. They do. And it's just a shame to see that, so many men turn in maybe the wrong direction. They are experiencing many of the things you mentioned there, the sadness, the loneliness, the feeling of not being good enough, the feeling of helplessness, the feelings of not being able to be successful. And then they turn towards people who promise them success in a way that's often demeaning and belittling of other people, other races, other what's the word I'm looking for? Other segments of society, and often was in particular women. It's, we're fresh off the back of Lou Ferrou's documentary about the manosphere. And it's, I imagine, before I ask you a question about that, it's like I imagine, you were saying that there was a suspicion about the work in the early years. And I experienced that, but I was in the kind of slightly different era of, working in and learning about kind of women and dating. And it was always just suspicious. And even up to 5 or 6 years ago, talking about dating, it was always met with suspicion of manipulation.
Yeah.
But now we have this other side of this offering of taking men in a direction. We have, the work of men's work. And then we have the kind of manosphere, which is a type of men's work, which isn't necessarily healthy in any way. It's a very unhealthy type of men's work, but it's directing men towards the kind of superficial success that we all crave, the money, the women, the cars, and so forth, and how that takes vulnerable young men and older men. It's not just young men in there. Vulnerable men who are struggling, who are seeking success, who want to feel worth and value, but they seek it in a way that has to push others down.
Mm. It's sad. It's going backwards. That's a particular way of men trying to achieve happiness that's going backwards, and that's going to old ways. And we just need to look around us. The old ways haven't worked. The old ways are done. It's not about us men walking over anyone else to get what we want. It's about us working together. It's the time for us all to work together in support, in equality, in love and care for each other, and to bring every one of us forward without hurting anyone else. It's not that hard to do. It really isn't. It's not that hard to do, and it's our responsibility. No one can change this for us. It's up to us men to do. So for those of us in our hearts, it's up to us to lead other men home to their hearts. And I've noticed that every man who really finds his heart never ever wants to go back to that old way of being, which was much more around dominating others to get what we needed.
Mm. God, yeah, that bit you said there. Once you kind of find your heart, your emotional capacity, your feeling capacity, the awareness to know how your emotions and your actions and emotions impact some other people, there's no going back. Even if you wanted to, even because, and I don't know, I'm not talking very personally. It's like, sometimes I look back on my life, 15 years ago, it almost felt simpler, because I was a bit more numb and I was a bit more disconnected. I was able to be more focused on what I wanted with disregard but sometimes for the pain that I might have caused. But it can often feel like, and I've had a lot of conversations with men in the work about this, other coaches, it can often have felt like you were making progress, whereas when you do start to feel your heart and the depth of the impact of not just you yourself as a man, of men in general, it can often feel that you're so concerned and attentive to how you're impacting people and your words and your actions and the way of being that you're much slower to move forward in and take action in what you want. I don't know if that's something you've often seen, maybe in yourself or in the men you've worked with.
This path to maturity and particularly to sovereignty, because sovereignty is much more about the we. Me being in sovereign says it's not okay just to take myself to a good place. It's part of my job to take all of us to that good place and not leave anyone out. It's a tough path. For me, coming out of numbness, I was like, what am I doing to myself? It was so easy being completely numb, not having to really care about other people, as you say, steaming forward, being really focused on what I want, and not bothering to look around behind me to see the casualties I've left behind, just getting on with it. It had a feeling of ease about it, and where, part of my journey to waking up to feelings was, oh, wow, this sorrow is painful. No wonder I didn't want to go near it. It hurts to feel this. And that's part of me being a man. That's part of my maturity and my capacity. I have sorrow. My sorrow makes me human. Without being able to feel my sorrow, I'm dangerous, actually, because I can't feel other people's sorrow or know what sorrow I cause them. It's a tough path. The path to wholeness and love and authenticity it's not an easy path, and it takes years of work, and sometimes we just feel like we're circling round, but actually I've realized that we're circling round and coming to a new level each time we do circle. And yeah, it's not an easy path, but it's beautiful, and I wouldn't change it. And I put myself as very deeply happy at this stage in my life, whereas I wasn't before. I was getting on with what I thought needed to be done, but I wasn't doing it out of a place of happiness.
That's such a good point, isn't it? We moving through out of duty or what we think we have to be as a man to be, successful, but actually, underlying that, there's a deep disconnection, a deep unhappiness, and even I speak to many men, and even myself, was like, there was guilt. I was often riddled with guilt in the past of the things I was doing, and then would push it down and pretend it was fine, mentally rationalize, and try and get on with it. Instead of now, those guilty things don't occur so often, or if at all. And then I can be with the guilt and analyze it and reflect, the self-reflection aspect that can be so potent for us to gain deeper understanding of ourselves.
That's right. And also being inauthentic is such hard work. God, I've got to work out which mask I'm putting on here, or how I've got to be there, or how I've got to please them there, or what I've got to show of myself. And when I'm authentic, none of that's there. I just am the same everywhere I am. Hopefully my heart's out front and I'm just being myself. But oh my God, it's so exhausting when I'm inauthentic, because I'm just trying to strategize as to which me I need to be, which false me I need to be in each situation, and how much of myself I've got to hide and keep hidden, and it's exhausting. So actually, once we get through and become so much more true to ourselves, it's so much easier to live as who we are than living out of pretense.
100%. I'll change tact a little bit here. I know before we jumped on, we were talking about men in relationships. And you were mentioning that you had a particular lens on why it is that men really struggle with this such vital aspect of life that men are so drawn to, relationships, love, intimacy. What is your idea behind why we struggle so much with this what can be such a beautiful aspect of life?
A lot of this has come from, I work in an organization called Celebration of Being. This is a women's organization that runs Noble Man. And in Noble Man, men get to go to a space entirely held by the feminine, and they have an opportunity to look at their wounds of the feminine. Now, I went there thinking, okay, well, I can look at the wounds of my mum, etc., etc. What I realized is vastly more than that. I have an internal feminine inside me, which I never realized. And this part of me has got so much more access to feelings, to consideration, to wanting to be in relationship, to care, to love. And all of that was completely dead inside me, like completely dead. The model of myself which I had was, I might show a bit of feeling in relationship, mostly around sex, maybe, but not really. I didn't have much access to my love. I would be there, but being a numb man, I was only half there. And I know so many women now who are saying, I'm not going to enter another relationship with a man who's not working on himself.
Oh,
And I know why that is, because I was really poorly equipped to be in relationship before I started working on myself, because I couldn't bring my feelings into the relationship. I didn't fully trust relationship. I had one foot out the door at all times, ready to run if things weren't quite as I wanted them. And I just didn't have the language. I really didn't have the language. So I wasn't fully there. I wasn't really present in the relationship. And for women who love and want to be with a man, that's tremendously painful. Being with a man who doesn't know himself, who isn't authentic, who has tons of behaviors in shadow which come out and show up in the relationship anyway. And so, oh yeah, from what I can see, us men need to do our work to get us into healthy, loving relationships so we can maintain our relationships long term. And without that sort of work, I feel that we're in a difficult place. And women end up not wanting to be around us because we're destructive and painful in relationship.
yeah. Yeah, it's the story of many a woman I speak to. It's and even if I look at myself, it's just similar. My partner is also a coach, and she works with women. And so many of the women that I speak to, often coach her clients, they're like, well, the men I meet, they're always unsure, they're never clear, they don't communicate clearly, they don't, if they do like you, they don't show it, and there's a lot of back and forth internally, and I really see internally for a man why that happens. But I think I know why that happens, they tell me. What do you see as like the kind of crux that's really causing men to actually, this first piece around this inconsistency piece that they so obviously exhibit in this hot coldness that men bring through in love, in dating, in relationships?
Yeah. Men are unsure about themselves. They're not doing their work. They don't truly believe in themselves. There's a real wound in relationship that men have. I had it big time, which that wound is that I'm not lovable. So no one can totally love me, and I can't do this love stuff right. So I can't really totally love other people. And that's a big wound. It's a really big wound. And it had me running from relationships for a very long time because I didn't believe that I could do this stuff. I had no sorrow, I had no sadness, I couldn't really feel. And one relationship after another ended up with women sitting in front of me saying the same thing. Where are you? When are you going to really be here? When are you going to commit? Who are you? And I didn't really know. And if us men want to be in relationships, we have to truly be in relationships with ourselves first. And we need to know where we're wounded around relationship and bring some healing to that ourselves. Because if we don't do that, we end up quite often with our inner boy between us and our partner. So our wounded inner boy who was wounded in his relating and his feeling nature, is going to his partner, heal me, look after me, take care of me, fix me, I need you, I need you. And so the woman's ending up with a boy in relationship rather than her king. And actually the job of us men is to take care of our wounded boys and our feeling nature and orient that to ourselves. So my wounded boy doesn't destroy my relationship with his endless needs and his childishness. Actually, I take care of him inside, so he's not there in front of my partner, and my partner gets a loving, sovereign man rather than a wounded boy. And I can't do that if I don't work on myself.
Yeah. I definitely certainly see that. And I also see as another dynamic I see with men is that when their wounded boy is in charge, the wounded boy continually chooses women who will recreate their past experiences, whether it's with their mother or their father, or the wounded boy I see quite often with men is that they're wounded in a boy. He was wounded at school and was ignored and wasn't attractive to women and so forth. He still allows that wounded in boy to be a bit in charge, and then the man moves around the world looking for the resolution of that rejection, of that not being desired, and becomes obsessed with attractiveness and the value of a woman and showing the world that, look, I'm now a valuable, attractive man, but also ends up creating a dynamic quite often where there's a choosing of very immature women, or women that are actually going to reject them and treat them badly in very much the same way that they experienced in those childhoods with their crushes, or even those girlfriends that they experienced.
And that'll go on from relationship to relationship. It'll go on our whole lives unless we turn inwards and attend to it. It certainly did for me. I repeated the same mistakes. I chose the same type of woman time and time again because my boy was in there looking for his healing. I wasn't aware of that. And actually I chose the same one who'd bring the same repeated wounding as my mum did to me. And so that cycle of not understanding and confusion in relationships just never changed for me until I actually did my work around the feminine and my wounds in relationship. So I can hold those wounded parts, and I don't live my relationship from them. I live my relationship from healthy love, not from wounded love, which is what a lot of us men are doing. And it's painful for everyone, And we've mentioned the boy, but the teenagers even more at hand, especially around relationships, because a lot of us are leading a wounded teenager's version of relationship. And that's a disaster.
Yeah. And it's so interesting, isn't it? Because we see now and across the board, and maybe I see this more than most, where, men are like, all women are like this, and women aren't loyal, and they're like this, and da-da-da-da-da-da. And they don't look at what it is attracts them to that particular type of woman. It can be very, very pervasive. And I say the same thing to the women that I speak to as well, which is like, why is it that you keep being attracted to this particular template of man? Or if you're a woman, if you're a man, why are you attracted to this template of woman? There's some responsibility for you to start looking at, like, what is it about these people that you gravitate towards, or where they gravitate towards you, you're still a yes to them in some capacity. And that's the kind of individual work that we can take responsibility for, in my eyes.
Yeah, that's right. And two people moving into a relationship out of wound is a painful cocktail. That's going to cause a lot of pain, and a lot of pain in ending as well, because it's very unlikely to be successful. And us men can do ourselves a huge favor by doing our relational work, a huge favor. And more than that, we've got responsibility to our partners, but a huge responsibility to our children. And if we don't do our own work, we pass our wounds on to the children automatically. We can't help it. It's going to happen. And if we can't do our relational work, we'll pass our way of relating onto our children. And so they'll see a somewhat unsuccessful, hard way of relating. And for my generation, that's pretty epidemic, that with the divorce and everything else, so many of the men I'm working have never had a healthy version of relationship to learn from.
Yeah. I see the same thing with the men I work with. So many of them, parents divorced at some point. And I also see, and I wonder what your take on this, I see the biggest impact of divorce is usually in teenage years. If a boy sees his parents break up between the age of anything from 12 to kind of 17, when it's earlier, it seems to not impact them so much. When it's later, it's just they kind of went their separate ways. But those years, those teenage years, seem to really leave an imprint for their concept of safety in relationship. Like it's okay to be safe with their emotions, I've noticed.
Yeah. It's a real shattering between those ages for a man to lose the safety of his parents and his family. It has a huge effect. Men struggle for so long around it, maybe for their whole lives, because of divorces taking place, and all their world gets shattered, and then as the parents try and rebuild with the children whatever the way they can. Whew, it's sad. It causes so much pain. Yeah, it really does.
Yeah. I just think of the struggle, of the emotional struggle with men that just continues down. I think it's getting better. And we touched on it earlier, but the emotional aspect of relationship. And I guess the bit I want to touch on with you actually is the kind of intensity, the importance of emotion, because emotional intensity arises. Like, how do you see a man can start to school himself in his capacity and ability to stay with emotional intensity when it arises in relationship? When I say relationship, that might be in the relationship itself, but also in himself, with the worry, the panic, the feelings are not good enough. How can he grow in that capacity to be with that and shepherd that healthily?
Yeah, I think men doing their work together is a huge resource for men in relationship, because when we do our work together, we realize that our difficulties and our conflicts in relationship are quite common, and that we all have them. And I feel that men really, at best, can do their work amongst other men and one-to-one, and get their masculinity and their solidity sorted and in a good place. And that'll vastly help them in their work in relationship, because a healthy masculine is needed in relationship. And if the men haven't brought themselves to a solid place with that amongst their brothers, then they're trying to step into a relationship on one foot in a way. And some of that's even more marked these days, because lots of young men have been brought up by single mums, or in a situation where they haven't had much masculine around. And us men need to get together to sort out that deficit and help the men who've not had good examples of masculine, help them to know masculine's not bad. Just like anger's not bad, men aren't bad, masculine's not bad. It's very difficult for a man who might have been conditioned into feeling that masculine's dodgy or hurtful, and you can only be kind and only be good, and those sort of versions. Those aren't true. Us men need to be all of ourselves, and to be aware of what parts of ourselves we're putting into the world at each given time, and a beautiful place to do that work is amongst men. Jung says our shadow work is utterly necessary, but our masterpiece is when we start to bring in our more gentle, our more feminine nature, and to bring that side of us more alive. But we can't do that if we haven't tended to our masculine first. Otherwise, we just end up as more feminine without the corresponding masculine in place to hold all that. So yeah, I think it's men's work first, and then working with masculine and feminine. It can be a great recipe for men to be truly alive in their relationships and happy.
Yeah, to work with that intensity with other men, like you said, many men didn't have a trusting masculine figure, and they don't know what it's like to be in intensity with another man and it feel healthy,
That's right.
Where you're in not battle necessarily, but you can be in intense feelings and emotions with another man and feel safe and held, and learn the kind of transmission of like, oh yeah, we can be in anger together and it's intense, but actually at the back end there's connection, or we can be in frustration or conflict, and on the back end there's connection.
Yeah, that's right. So when we do our men's work, we can also bring online our wildness, and we can also even bring in our more shadowy, less pleasant aspects. We can do this with men because we can hold the danger and damage in each other. We've got enough force to hold all of that, so that men can become fully in integrity before they in the position in front of the feminine. And that work in at least to start with, in a lot of ways, needs to be done with men because we can hold each other through anything, really. And the feminine doesn't necessarily want that job.
Yeah, 100%. We're told often this, and it's very true. It's not their job.
It's not their job. It's not their job. It's our job to do first, and then to bring and stand opposite healthy feminine with our healthy masculine.
Yeah. Oh, Hugh, this has been a fantastic conversation. It's just the wisdom, the years of wisdom that, that I get to bathe in through you has been fantastic. The bits about healthy anger and the kind of powerless that men feel, and also, just what you've seen, the shifts from anger to sorrow and sadness and nice guy tendencies in men. I'm sure the listeners are wondering where they can hear more from you, where they can, start to work with you inside your groups. I know you, like you said, you're involved in a Noble Man. I've actually met a few men that have been through the Noble Man and speak incredibly highly of it. But yeah, I'm sure the listeners are wondering what sort of retreats you've got coming up, what you'll be running in the near future.
So my work is called the Sovereign's Journey.co.uk. We've got our next Sovereign's Journey starting in May this year. It's about a year's journey. There's 5 weekends on the ground where we're together from Thursday at 6 till Sunday at about 3. So the first 2 weekends are all spent working with our true king to help our true king get really solid in our heart, know himself, feel his strength, and tie up with all the forces of creation which are here to support our sovereignty, being it our soul or our ancestors or the divine masculine or the sacred feminine. Well, we get our king in a very strong position in the first 2 weekends of working together. And then we start to go deep into the shadows, and our king gets to know all the parts of us that are living in the shadows. And our king evolves us or rebirths us into the choice of our heart as to who we choose to be now rather than our conditioning. So he kind of scrubs us through, does an internal evaluation of who we are, sits in front of each part of us and evolves that part to our king's choice of who we are. And every part of us runs in our conditioning until our king interrupts that. It can't be helped. That's just the way it is. And then our king brings new meaning and reorientates us around love and joy and peace. It takes 5 weekends to run that process, and so we consider during that year our king is in training, and at the end of the year our king is coronated into his true throne, knowing that he has the ability to keep us in our own choice of who we are rather than our inherited and conditioned choice. It's a small journey. We only take 16 men in one go. I usually have 8 staff of men who've been through the Sovereign's Journey already, and we form an incredibly tight group, and we walk through the valley of death together, the valley of our past, our shadows, our pain, our difficulty, so that each king can heal the man and bring him to his absolute best.
Incredible,
Yeah,
really
so
beautiful.
it's a slow and long journey over a year with a small group and with dedicated staff, and it's an incredible journey, and it's a very beautiful journey. So that at the end, a man knows himself inside out and has very powerful choices to how to lead his life. And we record every piece of work a man does. So he has a written record of every piece
Wow.
of evolutionary work he's done. So he never needs to lose his, it's not like it's gone in 2 weeks. He knows the piece of work, he's got a record of it, and he can keep himself on track for the rest of his life.
Incredible. Incredible. I love it. It sounds beautiful. A year-long journey, because things take time.
Things take time. There has to be integration after. On each of the weekends, a man will do 4 or 5 pieces of really intense work. And then he needs to integrate that in the 2-3 months before his next weekend and get those internal characters properly in place. And so we have meetings between our times on the ground. We have WhatsApp groups where everyone supports each other in the journey between when we physically meet. And actually what I find is those WhatsApp groups tend to go on forever, and the men carry on because the friendship we create in this powerful journey, they're huge friendships, and the men continue on the journey as a group for the rest of their lives, and then men also come and staff so that they can support other men on the journey as well.
Powerful, beautiful. Thank you, Hugh. Thank you for such a beautiful conversation. Thank you for the work that you do and the work that you've been doing for many years with men. Listeners, thank you for listening. This is a sort of episode again. I often say this is, share with a man. There's probably a man out there, who struggles to be with anger. He's just with his niceness all the time, or relationships are an issue, and he needs to step into this sovereign aspect of himself. Please share it with that man, or maybe you're his partner, and you could just listen to it with him in the car, a nice long car journey, and discuss the topics. I think is always a beautiful way to learn. So last thing for me to do is to say a big thank you to Hugh. Thank you to your listeners. Thank you for listening in. And I say until our next episode, ciao, ciao.
Thank you, David.